Welcome back to Learning Attack Vector Tactical. This is part 3, Flex Points and Shellstars. I'm Mike Zika. I'll be your instructor today. If I sound different than other videos, I've been modifying my microphone settings, so still me though. Before we begin, a couple things to go over. First of all, this is not a comprehensive course. There's no way we can go over all the nitty-gritty of the rules. We do have a 5-part YouTube series explaining a lot of the math behind seeking weapons. So we'll be sprinkling a little bit of that into here just to explain some of the concepts. But if you want the nitty-gritty, there's a 5-part series. It's a couple hours long. However, you do not need to know any of that to play the game. We're just trying to give you enough to get started today so you can start playing around. As always, the best way to learn is to play and make mistakes. And as before, this is not authoritative. I make mistakes in my presentations. Sometimes the rules are errated. So always check the latest rulebook. Go ask online at the Astra fan page, as well as the Discord. The concepts that we're covering today are flex points, firing orders, seeking weapons, Shellstars, the launching of Shellstars, dodging of Shellstars, and when they impact. First up is flex points. Flex points represents the command and control of the ship. It represents how well your bridge crew is at quickly responding to various situations. They are generated by bridge boxes, and most ships will have 1 to 2 flex points. Flex points are a lose it or use it resource, and they do not accumulate from segment to segment. They are regenerated at the end of each segment, however, so they come back at a pretty high rate. Flex points are not tracked by the software because, again, you have 1 or 2 points per ship, and it's pretty easy to remember if you spent a flex point or not. If you have a hard time remembering, you can always use the notepad item to note down if you spent a flex point or not, but it's not really worth coding it into the software. So what can you use a flex point for? Well, you can reorder the fire order phase. Another use of flex points is to change orders during the long orders phase. And by that we mean cancel an order that was given during the right orders phase, or you can change an order that was written during the right orders phase, or you can initiate a new order. However, you cannot cancel an order that's already in progress. For example, pivoting is the most common case. If you write a new pivot order in the right orders phase, say pivot 3 windows, you can cancel that so you don't pivot, or you can change it to pivot either to a different window, some more windows, less windows, what have you. However, after the first segment where you actually start the pivot, you cannot cancel or change it until it completes. You can also use a flex point to cancel an attack order during the fire order phase. This is important because it'll save you energy and cooldown cycle for your weapon. So if you want to shoot your laser during the fire order phase, you would note down laser during the right order step. But if your opponent either blows up or gets hit by some impactors and blows up, or whatever the reason is, you decide not to fire that laser, you can spend a flex point to not fire it and thus saving the energy and the cooldown cost. Otherwise, even if the ship is an exploding ball of gas, you still have to fire that laser. Also, during the fire order phase, you can use a flex point to shift your attack by 1 or 2 zones to make it a shallow angle shot. Now, it really depends on the geometry of the ship you're shooting at. Most times, you only shift by 1 window or 1 zone. On cylinders, you can shift 2 zones down along the length. But that's covered more in detail, obviously, in the rulebook, so I refer you to there. We saw an example of shifting an aim point during the example game in the last session. So, if you want to see an example of that, you can pop over to the last session. It's near the end of the combat. Now, this is not a comprehensive list because the rules can always be updated to add more items to the list. And I don't think I've gone through all of them in the actual rulebook. So just, again, not authoritative, so this is not the comprehensive list. Fire orders. Now, this is a somewhat complex topic, deceivingly so. So this will take several slides. So if you need to go back and review concepts once you get to the end, completely understandable. The rulebook lists 4 primary steps in the fire orders phase. Launch seeking weapons, damage from beams, which are lasers, nuclear weapons, then kinetic impactors. The shorthand for it is launch, beams, nukes, impactors. The order of operations matter because B3 23.1 states that a weapon destroyed earlier in the sequence is unavailable later in the sequence. So if you have a nuke that is shot down by a laser, it will not detonate later during the fire order step. However, for flex points, you can spend a flex point to change the order of operations for a single ship. So again, if we scroll back, our 4 primary steps are launch, beams, nukes, impactors. You can spend a flex point to first fire your beams and then launch your seeking weapons. And if multiple ships spend flex points and a conflict occurs, the default ordering is used. We'll go more into that in a second. And probably the most important point here is this expenditure of flex points is secret. You do not know if your opponent is reordering the fire step, nor does he know that you are reordering the fire step. And it's done per ship. So if you're flying multiple ships, you can do a different sequence of orders on each different ship. For example, we have 4 ships here. We have 2 ships on the green side. Let me turn on my laser pointer. We have 2 ships on the green side and 2 ships on the purple side. Ship A is firing a beam weapon at Y. Ship B is firing a beam weapon at X. X is launching some seeking weapons at B. They will not hit this segment. Y is also launching some seeking weapons at B. And some seeking weapons up here are hitting A, this segment. A lot of seeking weapons, you'll notice a code after it. That's just an identification code. It's just completely arbitrary. So we have 5 things going on in the sequence. So the default ordering is first X and Y will launch their seeking weapons. Then any damage that occurred will be applied. Obviously, none. Next up, A and B will fire their beam weapons. And then any damage that occurs applies. And then finally, this impactor will hit A. And then damage is applied. So in this case, everything can pretty much happen and nothing will impact the other because nothing will be destroyed before it occurs. Because these seeking weapons will be launched before B fires the laser. Okay, so that previous slide was the default order. Now let's assume that X has spent a flex point. So during the right order step, X spends a flex point to try to get an advantage over the purple side. So it spends a flex point to have its impactors impact first during the first step. Because it can't have its impactors and launch occur within the same step, the launch gets kicked out to the second step. So this impactor right here from ship X will impact A, and then Y will launch its impactors. Then in step 2, X will launch its impactors, and then A and B will fire their beams. Now A, as it possibly took damage from the impactors right here, may no longer have its lasers to fire. So in that case, no, this will not occur. So X is gambling that'll be able to take out A, or more particularly A's lasers, before A can fire them by spending a flex point. However, during the right order step, as X is writing this down, A also figures out, hey, I have incoming impactors. I might as well spend a flex point to fire my lasers first, just in case X is spending a flex point. In which case, we get this sequence of events. First A fires its beams, damage is applied. Then the impactor hits, damage is applied. And then Y fires its Coilguns, assuming they were not destroyed by A. And any damage is applied. And then X launches its seekers, and then B fires its lasers at X. because both X and A spend a flex point, X kind of got the short end of this deal, but it's always a gamble as these things are done in secret. So as you can tell, this can get rather complex rather quickly. And when we get to the actual software, we'll show you how to do this. It's not as difficult to do in practice, and the software will adjudicate what happens when. So during the fire orders phase, it's best to think of it as a sequence of 20 steps. So we have slots 1 through 4. Each ship can do one and only one thing during each slot. And you can only do that thing once. So you can only launch once per turn, once per segment. You can only fire beams once per segment. Your nukes can only do damage once per segment. And your impactors can only impact once per segment. And by spending a flex point, you can decide where that can go. Or if you don't spend a flex point, it occurs here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps per slot and 4 slots. So there's 20 independent attack steps that are possible. And again, the software will handle when things will occur, but this is what it will look like if you put it into a nice little table format. Next up is seeking weapons. Seeking weapons have a couple characteristics. First, they spend multiple segments in flight closing in on the target. Beam weapons will hit instantaneously because speed of light, where seeking weapons will take time to reach the target. This means they're able to be dodged and shot down. All seeking weapons are ammunition based, so you will eventually run out of shots. Well, technically you will run out of shots with a laser because you have a finite amount of heat you can use to generate power. They tend to be not seen as being ammunition based. Seeking weapons also have the distinction of being rapid fire with a low power cost. A Coilgun can fire pretty much every single segment for a very low power cost. Missiles can be launched every single segment, as well as Katyushas, until you run out of ammo. Seeking weapons can best be thought of as terrain in space. You basically you create these zones where your opponent basically does not want to move into, so you kind of force them to move in different directions. Unless they want to take damage, in which case, hey, sure, go fall off a cliff. There are 3 types of seeking weapons. You have Coilguns, which is your classic railgun-like thing. You have missiles, which also includes the nukes, as that's a possible payload. As well as Katyushas, which are similar to missiles and Coilguns, and it's kind of outside the scope of today. It's just they launch like missiles, but impact like Coilguns. With the exception of nukes, all damage is done via the Kinetic Impactors. We'll cover a bit more of that later. This is the most math-intensive portion of the game. Fortunately, all the math has been hidden away in the play aids. So just trust the play aids if you're doing this by hand, or trust the Avid Assistant if you're using the actual software. All the math is done for you. There's still a little bit of math to do, but it's like grade school level stuff. Again, if you want to go through the full math and logic behind the Shellstars, we do have a 5-part series on the subject. Impactors. Impactors, or kinetic impactors, this is the main way that seeking weapons do damage. They are launched by Coilguns, they're deployed by missiles, and they're the payload of Katyushas. Impactors are smart rods. They come in 3 sizes, 50 kilograms, 100 kilograms, or 200 kilograms. It's a smart rod as they have a sensor package and thrusters that are used to refine the flight path. This smart sensor package and thrusters is required because space is big, ships are small. Just using the attack vector scale, trying to hit something with an impactor is basically the equivalent of threading a needle from 40 feet away. It's roughly a 4,000 to 1 ratio. We look at the size of the ship you're shooting at versus the distance you're shooting across. So with that in mind, it's very, very easy to see why you just can't throw dumb rocks into space and hope to hit something, because just a half-second thrust on the thrusters will move you out of the path of that dumb rock. So the rocks have to be smart and steer into the ship they're going after. Impactors could also be customized. It's outside the scope of this tutorial, but just keep in mind that you can make them armor-piercing, fragment, or give them armor, also referred to as hardening. There's a whole design system in the rules. Have at it. Now, the mass of the impactor helps determine its damage, but the more important part is its rate of closure, or ROC. If you see ROC, it stands for rate of closure, and is a key component in determining damage. We've included the formula right here. So the amount of joules, or energy, it's involved with the impact is 1/2 times the mass times velocity squared. Rate of closure is measured in hexes per segment. So if you see a rate of closure of 3, that's 3 hexes per segment. The rate of closure is calculated using the target's vector, the attacker's vector, and the muzzle velocity of the launcher. Again, this is handled by the play aids if you're doing it by hand, or the Avid Assistant if you're using the software. So you don't need to calculate the rate of closure yourself. Also, you don't have to calculate how much energy is caused by this impactor, as it's been done for you in this handy dandy table right here on weapon card number 1. So for example, if you have a rate of closure of 12 with a 50 kilogram impactor, notice running through the formula right here, this will give you damage of 5,625 megajoules. And since it's 50 megajoules per point of damage, it comes out to 112.5 points of damage. We round down to 112. So if you see rate of closure 12, mass 50, which is right here, you can see we have 112. This relationship is important to know because damage doubles as you increase mass, because we have 50, 100, 200 kilograms. So as we go left to right on the table, you can see we roughly double each time, depending on where things are rounded. Whereas if we increase our velocity, it increases by the square of the velocity. So as we go up the chart, you can see this is not a uniform jump. Like from here to here, it's 7 points, 6 points, 7 points, and so on. That's to do with rounding and the fact we're going up by the square. Now there's 3 important angles to know. Again, the software handles all this, but it's more for planning purposes. Impact angle is always this line between the attacking ship and the target at the moment of launch. So you see something in direction AB, their angle of impact would be the opposite of that, which is DE. So that will always be the case because of how the things fly. Again, 5-part series if you want to look up all the fun math behind it. We have the launch angle. The launch angle is not necessarily directly at the target because, again, they have to fly through space, and we have to lead the target like you would if you shoot like a duck with a shotgun. And this difference between the impact angle and launch angle is called the aim shift. Again, all this is calculated by the Avid Assistant, but in case you see something funky going on, just keep in mind that we have our aim shift, which generates a launch angle, which is different than the angle to our actual target. Coilgun is the main seeking weapon in the 10 world setting. While missiles and Katyushas do exist, they tend to be a much more limited ammo type thing because they're big. So a lot of times you're using Coilguns to launch impactors at your opponent. Coilguns use magnets to accelerate payload. It's very similar, but not the same as a railgun. Coilguns are a thing in the real world, so just use Google to read more about Coilguns. Each Coilgun launches a payload of 200 kilograms at a time. This payload can then separate out into 1, 2, or 4 impactors. So it's like 1 200 kilogram impactor, 2 100 kilogram impactors, or 4 50 50 kilogram impactors. And each impactor forms a separate damage pool. All Coilgun launchers in the game, they each carry 8 200 kilogram payloads in their magazine. So a very common question I get is how many shots does each launcher have? It's always 8 shots. The code for Coilguns is very similar to that of lasers. You have the size, CG saying it's a Coilgun, how many impactors it has, the power, and the cooldown. So this right here is a size 2 Coilgun. Its payload is broken into two 100 kilogram impactors. It costs 1 power to use, has one segment of cooldown. If you see like 2 CG4, 1 and then +1, it'd be a size 2 Coilgun with 4 50 kilogram impactors at 1 power and 1 cooldown. Now the Shellstar. The Shellstar is the play aid that makes all the seeking weapons possible. It's an information-dense play aid that tracks incoming seeking weapons. Information included is when the seeking weapon will arrive, the range during each segment of flight, segments where it's under burn in case you launch a missile, because while missiles are the engines running, it's called under burn. Segments where the zone defense can be used. That's your point defense that your ship has in the form of zone defense lasers or zone defense particle beams or even counter missiles. It'll also contain the impact window, which again will never change. It'll also list the rate of closure, the directions in which you can dodge, and the weapon spread and projectile type. We'll see an example Shellstar in a second. There's often multiple Shellstars in play, because each salvo will have its own Shellstar, because it has its own unique characteristics, and it's not unusual to have upwards to 20 of them in flight at any given time. So this is a Shellstar. As you can see, there's lots of stuff going on. So first of all, this section right here, this cross-like thing, these represent the different dodge zones. So right here, this is called the center or middle. That's where a ship starts when you fire impactors at it. And then by thrusting, it can move around to the different dodge zones. The dodge zones are sized based on the thrusters of the impactor. So if you imagine an impact right here in the middle, it can thrust this far to the left and to the right before it'll run out of fuel and miss its target. If you have multiple Coilguns firing at the same time, each Coilgun can put its impactors into a separate zone, and since all the other information is the same, it all goes onto the same Shellstar. So you can put some impactors over here, some up here, some down here, some in the middle, however you want, and how you want to kind of like herd your target. So those are what these different zones are. And there are 9 of them on a Shellstar. So there's lots of variability about where you actually can launch your projectiles. And with 2 axes, there are 4 dodge directions, and they're listed here: EF++, BC-, direction D, direction A. And so this is as the shells are coming in at the ship. It basically boils down to a 2-dimensional problem, because the ship knows it has to go somewhere along the plane perpendicular to the incoming shells to dodge out of the way. And as long as you're within one window of one of these directions, you'll get dodge points into that direction. Now, if you're to make it 3D, if you're facing toward or away from the shells, you get dodge dots that will affect the rate of closure. So rate of closure is right here. Currently, it is 3. All these dots right here represents points of fuel, literally dots of fuel. They're actually the exact same symbol. So as your ship thrusts in one of the dodge directions, or within one window of it, you'll gain dots of dodge into that direction. And once you fill up, like for example 3 dots right here, your ship will shift over into that zone. So for this Shellstar, it actually shifted to this zone. because that's the current location. Now, if you shift towards or away from it, you'll get dots down here, and every 4 dots will increase or decrease the rate of closure by 0.5. So we have impact window, we have dodge directions, we have dots of dodge, rate of closure. The symbols right in here tell you what sort of impactors are coming in. If it has an X, it's a 50 kilogram impactor. If it's a plus, it's a 100 kilogram impactor. If it's a triangle, it's a 200 kilogram impactor. So this center zone right here has 12 50 kilogram impactors, 4 100 kilogram impactors, and 4 200 kilogram impactors. This zone over here has 2 100 kilogram impactors. And this zone has nothing. Down at the bottom is something called the time track. It lists out several bits of information. Along this top part right here lists out the current time. So this impactor was launched on turn 1, segment 1, and it'll hit on turn 1, segment 7. The bottom half of the track is the current range. So on turn 1, segment 1, it launched at range 18. On turn 1, segment 2, it'll be at range 15. And so on until it gets down to turn 1, segment 7, in which case it's at range 0 or hit. As you can see, our rate of closure right here is 3, so starting from here, it's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. This right here will show you where you currently are on the time track in case you forgot what segment it was, which occurs often enough that I put it into the code. So we know right now we're on turn 1, segment 3, and we're at range 12. The segments with the blue tint on top, those are the segments in which the zone defense of your ship can engage with the incoming impactors. That is outside the scope of today's lesson, as our simulator ships do not have zone defense. So that is the Shellstar. Now we've done the classwork, let's look at the actual Avid Assistant and virtual map, starting with the SSD page. So we come here to the virtual map, SSD page. And so up here, let me zoom in. This is one of our coilgun mounts. As you can see, this is our firing arcs. It's a size 2 coilgun. It fires 2 impactors, so they're 100 kilogram impactors. Because all packages are 200 kilograms, so they have divide by 2, so 100. 1 power plus 1 cooldown. And we have another coilgun launcher over here. Exact same stats. So this particular ship can fire above and below its nose with its coilguns. Down here, for purposes of the demo ships, we included the kinetic weapon damage chart with permission of Astra Games. And on the bridge here, right here, I had to find the bridge for a second, is how many flex points we currently have. Until our bridge is destroyed, we'll have 1 flex point per segment. Switching over to the Arcs tab, we'll see how to actually use the stuff. Once again, we're at our fishbowl or firing arc diagram that maps to our firing arc diagram right here. However, for coilguns and missiles as well, we have to select its muzzle velocity. A size 2 coilgun has a muzzle velocity of 16. There's a chart on weapon card 1 that lists all the muzzle velocities for all sizes of coilguns, but you can always downfire, so that's why we have select the muzzle velocity down here at the bottom using these 2 arrows left and right, instead of simply going, it's a size 2 coilgun. And this will tell us that our flight time is 7 segments, our rate of closure is 2.5 at the orange ship. So if you look at the orange ship, that's blue, red, green, of course it's going to be the last one, black, purple, orange. Okay, so our ship, well, let's change the sticks mode. Our ship is here, orange ship is down here, flying that away, we're flying this way. So we're aiming basically somewhere out in this area in front of it. Well, actually 7 segments, we're actually aiming for about right there for it to intercept. Other ships, have different arcs where you shoot at. And as our munitions go up in speed, the rate of closure, rate of closure 7.5. That's pretty fast. So missile burn 1. Okay. So right here is an example of an aim shift. This thing is a rate of closure of 2. And because of how you have to lead the target, it's so far out, we actually have a choice of which window to fire into because we're leading it by 30 degrees in this case. Because that'll be directly on the nose, no aim shift, that's 30 degrees. And we won't get an aim shift to 2. None of these weapons are slow enough for that right now, but it will pop up from time to time. So if you see multiple selections here on the firing up diagram, that's due to a name shift or hitting the line and various surrounding errors. So in order to actually shoot, we'll actually have to advance the turn a little bit. So let's advance this slightly, then come back to show you how to shoot. Okay, we've advanced to the fire order step. So right down here, now this is lit up. So we pick our target. Let's pick one that will hit relatively soon. 7 segments, rate of closure 2.5. And again, our muzzle velocity is 16 because we were sized to a Coilgun for the example ships. So this down here is a Shellstar button. This brings up our time track / Shellstar. So you can see right here, we're launching on turn 1, segment 1. It'll hit on turn 1, segment 8. We're currently range 17, it'll drop to 16, we're currently range 17. We'll drop down to 15, then 12, 10, 7, 5, 2, and then we'll hit. You can see how many dots of fuel the target will have to expend to dodge the different directions, as well as its dodge directions. To actually launch, let's say we're firing a single Coilgun. We simply select a zone in which to deploy its impactors. Let's say center. We click on the center zone. So it says up here, edit center, because we're in the center zone. We have 0 items total, so we'll click to add an item. And we will say a 100 kilogram impactor. Then we add it in. And as we have 2 of them, we have to add in a second one. So just do that again. The minus button will subtract 1 from the chosen selection. And that takes them all off. So let's add that one in again. Now, if you want to add that again without having to click the add button and update, the repeat button here will just repeat it. So we now have 2. If we click add too many, just go to the subtraction sign. Now, if we had a different Coilgun on the ship as well, say we want to add some 50 kilogram impactors from that one, we can then choose our drop down here, say, hey, we have 50 kilogram impactors, and go up to 4. Once we're done, we either hit previous or next to go back to the Shellstar. So you can see here, if we had 2 Coilgun launchers that are both size 2, or muzzle velocity 16, we can place 4 and 2 in there, assuming they're different sizes and support the 50 kilogram impactors. But we don't, so we're going to remove these. Again, to edit, just click the zone, select whatever you want from the drop down, and edit. Subtract, add, repeat, etc. This button here is for missiles, and that will be for probably supplement number 1 to these tutorial videos. So once you have your impactors on the Shellstar, you click Next. The ID is randomly generated. If you want to set a particular ID, just pop open the thing and type in a 3-digit code. That's mostly for your own paperwork to track if you want to write notes off to the side. Or if your opponent is referring to Shellstar number 785, you're not trying to scroll through going, is it this Shellstar? No. This one? No. It's 785. Click Launch, and the Shellstar has been added to the map. Now let's launch one at a different target. At the black ship. Oops. That's our actual Shellstar. So we'll say put it right here. Add another 100 kilogram impactor. Like so. We're a little off to the side. Click Next. Launch. So now we have two Shellstars on the map. As you saw up here, I can cycle through them like so. They don't show up in the turn sequence, but if we go over here, you can see we're cycling through our ship as well as our two Shellstars. When you have the target of the Shellstar down below, like this, it will light up in pink. So this Shellstar 727 is aimed at black, and so black will light up in pink when it's selected. That's because when you get down here to this button, it'll show you where that Shellstar will impact, as if this was a regular ship shooting. So for on this one, obviously we're not shooting at black, you have to select the orange ship. So when that impacts, it'll hit this side. This will change based on how the ship rotates and pivots during the flight of the impactor. Also, your impactors will show up in your ship color. So my ship color is red. So the red outlines and everything. So these will be highlighted in red. If my opponent launches some Shellstars at me, they will appear in a different color. So let me just set up a few shooting back. I've set up several Shellstars to come inbound on purple. So I'll select purple. And then through the target bar down here, as I cycle through, you can see, hey, look, I have this Shellstar, because a little missile symbol in front of it, coming at me, as well as this one right here. And so if I go down here and select this button, it'll show me its Shellstar. My opponents are highlighted in orange, so this is why it appears in orange. If I change the team color from orange to, say, blue, make it appear harder on the map to see, but easier on the Arcs tab, this is now highlighted in blue because I know it's my opponent's Shellstar. Because as you're cycling through the different Shellstars, it's like, is this one my or my opponent's? And again, this part down here will be highlighted in pink if it is indeed aimed at the ship up above. So when they're matching, the thing down below will be highlighted in pink. So each segment, during the right orders phase, I'll cycle through all of the different Shellstars that are incoming at me to figure out which way I want to pivot and turn. And as you can see, if you have a lot of things down here in the target bar, it can be quite painful cycling through everything. So we have these filters. Oops, that's not a filter. Next button over, filter. So filter mode, currently it's all items. We go with normal targeting, attackers are ships. The targets are Shellstars aimed at my ship. Now when I cycle down through here, I only see the Shellstars aimed at my ship. Go to this mode. I can then just cycle through the Shellstars aimed at my ships. When I get to this screen, it's because I'm aimed at the hex in the middle, the freestyle target. That way I can see which way I need to dodge and how many dots I've accumulated in the different directions. I'll go back to all items. And voila. Now to see what Shellstars hit on, oops, I keep clicking the orders button instead of the filter. So normal targeting, attackers are Shellstars that are in flight. Now you can go through up here and see how they're flying through the air. You can cycle through the display mode with this button until you get a Shellstar. Then you just cycle through. I only have one Shellstar in flight. at orange, I should say, and one at black. Nothing at green, black, just have the one, and so on. So playing around with the filters, you can get different effects so you can see what's going on more easily. Really important to have lots of things flying through the air. And all items will go back to normal mode where you have everything being displayed. I kept popping this up a few times. We'll see this more in action as we go through an example turn sequence. And now we're going to run through a couple turns just so you can see how Shellstars look in flight and how you can respond to them, as well as the setting of the order page. So we've all actually started the turn. So we're on fire orders, and we launched several Shellstars worth of stuff. So we're going to fast forward until the next fire orders turn, going at the good old times 10 speed. Okay, we're on the orders page. Couple things. First, if you see these two red dots right here, those are your outgoing Shellstars. There's a slight quirk in the attack vector rules. When the game was designed, the locations of the incoming Shellstars were never meant to be placed on the map. 98, probably 99% of the time, the only vessel that cares about them is the target, and all they care about is the relative range, as the direction is known at the time of launch. However, with the advent of computers and the Avid Assistant and the virtual map, people want to see things on the map. So that leads to the quirk in the rules. The rules state when placing a Shellstar on the map, you place it in the center of the window that is incoming at the proper distance away from the ship. And as those cones are 30 degrees wide, you get this, what happens right here, where these things appear to jump multiple hexes on the segment of launch. It's a small little quirk in the rules, not really worth rewriting the rules to make it more accurate. Because again, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, only the target cares about where the actual Shellstar is, and it's always relative to it coming towards it. So another quirk is Shellstars move at the start of the turn. It's just how the time track works. So they've already moved for the turn, so they will not move during the movement step. Which makes trying to target them slightly tricky, because your ships will move, and then the Shellstars will move before the ships can fire at them. It all works out in the end, but if you're trying to eyeball it on the map, don't do that, just use the tools. During the write orders step, one of the things you can do is write fire orders. And typically just go in here, click this button, and go, hey, I'm going to do beams, we're going to launch. If you want to reorder the sequence, you just drag how you want it to happen, like so. And this will flip over and say, hey, you're going to be spending a flex point to do that. Reset. You also just say, hey, I want to spend a flex point. Then all these will still occur in the same order, except it will as if you had spent a flex point. Because if you're trying to outrace somebody to launch seeking weapons before they fire beams at you, you want, and by spending a flex point and not reorder everything, that's how you do it. Otherwise, if you reorder, you'll automatically spend a flex point. Like so. And again, your opponent is also doing this in secret as well. And again, as we look through the Shellstars, they're incoming. So normal targeting, ships, Shellstars aimed at my ship, and go to this mode. You can see right now we're on the second segment of flight, and we have not spent any fuel to get out of the way. So my guy here, I'm going to pivot up slightly, and I will start burning fuel next segment. Then we move to the fire order step. And as you can see, we have lots of people doing stuff this segment. And because I spent flex points for beam weapons and moved them to the first slot, I fire my beams first. And then black will launch its seeking weapons. And then I'll launch my seeking weapons. And then green will fire its beam point, because its beam weapons has to spend a flex point. And then blue and black will fire their beam weapons, because they did not spend a flex point. We're not going to walk through that, as we covered how to do attacks in the last session. But this is how you can see how everything occurs in the correct order. And the numbers right here refer to that chart we displayed earlier. So this chart right here, so it's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So that's where these numbers come from. So we're starting a pivot here, and we're going to fast forward until the next right orders phase. Okay, we're back at the right orders phase. And as I was cycling through this, I realized, hey, I fired 2 Coilguns that I forgot to mark off my power. Let's take care of that real fast. So I'm down to 14 power. Okay, so right orders phase. I still have my filters turned on. So I can look at the Shellstars. So this one, it's blue, so I know it's not mine. It's on its 3rd segment of flight. And it's on its 3rd segment of flight. Nothing new has been launched at me. So we're good. By targeting, attackers are Shellstars, are in flight. I can see this guy right here is not being dodged, and no is still on track to hit on segment 8. And right, same thing for this guy, except he's set to hit on segment 2 of turn 2. Okay, I'll clear my filters to back to all. I'm not going to launch anything this turn. We're just going to fast forward. Actually, is my pivot done? This is my last segment for my pivots. And yeah, I'll turn on, whoops. I'll turn on my thrust. These guys thrust quite a lot, so I'll just do a nice simple thrust 4 so we can see more what's going on. Because otherwise, these guys will accumulate so many dots of thrust so quickly that it's like, dang. So again, we'll fast forward to the next right orders phase. Okay, here we are at the right orders phase. I hit a thrust break because I had just finished a pivot while thrusting, which is to be expected. So first go to the ARCs page and look at the incoming Shellstars. So normal targeting, Shellstars are aimed at my ship. Go to this mode. So you can see I have accumulated 1 dot in direction D, as I was facing within 1 window of direction D when I applied thrust. I'm now actually pitched up into C++. And so back to here, because I want to dodge up. And I need to dodge within 1 window of EF++ for that. Did I do that? Nope. Oh, this will be fun. I'm dodging C++, which is actually within 1 window of BC+. So I'm actually positioning myself to fly directly towards the incoming Shellstar. So it's this Shellstar over here coming at me. You see a little red dot. I'm pointing directly at it, or close enough for government work. So I need to change my pivots to go somewhere else. So this is why you should always look at your Shellstars. Okay, on this window, if you this is normal pop-up for the Shellstars. So EF++ for the other Shellstar, +++. So if I go up 1 more window, I'll be within 1 window of all those dodge directions and actually dodge, which is probably a better idea. So you can see on this one, I actually gained 1 dot towards this impactor as I was within 1 window of CD. I applied thrust. So, not doing too good at the whole dodging game right now, but that's why we need to check every single segment to make sure that we didn't make a mistake. Okay, so that's all good. So I'm going to check my Shellstars. So again, filters. Attackers are Shellstars. They're in flight. So I'm getting to the zone defense region, but these ships do not have zone defense, so we don't have to worry about that. And I'm not dodging with either ship because that's too much work. And we're good to go, so I'll just reset all items and move on to the next turn. Actually, segment. Now we'll fast forward to the next right orders phase. So back to the right orders, checking those Shellstars. So let's go normal targeting, ships, targeting me. Okay, so yeah, we're getting dots in different directions. So I want to get EF++, and I'm now facing directly up, so I'll start getting those dots in EF++, as well as +++. Oh, back to here. Check the other Shellstar. Yep, I got one dot in the correct direction going up, so that's good. And now fast forward to the next right orders. So you can see these Shellstars on the map are getting closer and closer to their respective targets. Checking the arcs. Okay, I've got 2 dots in the upward direction on this guy. And now 1 dot in the upward direction on this guy. And so 2 more segments of thrust. So 1 and 7, I will have dodged out of the way. Let's go with all items. So if I go to my Shellstar, you can see, yeah, I'm still on target to hit 2-2, as well as 1-8. So this one will hit in 2 more segments, and we'll see what happens then. Okay, so we're on turn 1, segment 7. And select our purple ship, and select the incoming impactors. So we have 2 dots going up. So right now, we're still here in this middle section, as it's highlighted in this reddish color. We're just a few segments away from hit, so 3 more segments until we're hit. On this guy, it's a long time until we're hit, and we've already dodged this direction well away from this one over here. So we're doing A-okay. However, if we start thrusting towards direction E, we could go from this zone to this zone pretty easily, as whatever zone has the most number of dots, or should I say whichever direction has the most number of dots, that's the direction that's counted. And in case of a tie, the attacker chooses. And for so changing the filter, so this guy has not hit yet. Next segment, this guy will hit. Okay, so right orders. So we know that, oh hey, this guy is going to hit. There you go, orange. So we know he's going to hit on this segment. If you look, it will hit him 1 above the port. So that would be the zone of impact. And if it's a cylinder, no, same thing. Also, if we go to the orders page, you see that kinetic impact damage has a green tint to it. So we know that this segment, we have a Shellstar that is hitting. Now, it does not check to see if there's something in the zone that hits, just that, hey, it's going to impact this segment. So if we want to rearrange it like such for a flex point, we can do so. And the green ship is also going to fire its beam weapons, just so we can see how it appears in the listing. And also on here, let's launch some more seekers. Now we advance the turn. So this shows us that first our impactor will hit this segment. Then we'll launch any new seeking weapons. And then the green ship will fire its beam weapons. So nifty little thing is if you actually click on here, it'll take you to the Shellstar. If you click on here, it'll take you to the ship. That way you can quickly get to the item you need to check on the ARCS page. And meanwhile, the other Shellstars, they're in flight. Oh, that's way away. As you can see, we've thrust enough to be up here. And the other one, we've thrusted enough to be up here, so in 2 segments it will miss. And after damage is dealt, the Shellstar will automatically be removed from the listing at the start of next segment. The software scans through and goes, oh, hey, you hit last segment, remove. So we won't need to worry about it in future segments. And finally, as a reminder, let's find the Shellstar that hit. There we go. This guy right here hits orange. Its rate of closure is 2.5. So if we look on the SSD, 2.5 is 9 points of damage, because these are 100 kilogram impactors. That's all there is. There ain't no more, at least for the demo setup for demo number 3. Demo 3 is basically 6 ships just kind of duking out freestyle. So if you find some friends to help fly the ships for you, or just fly all of them yourself, it's up to you. So as before, the best way to do this is to launch Chrome and Firefox so that you have 2 different web browsers. If you only have one web browser installed, you can launch one version of it in incognito mode or private mode, depending on which web browser you're using, and go to the Ask Me website that way. And then use the incognito one as kind of like your master control. So this is our incognito window, as you can tell by the darker color, and the fact it says incognito in the corner. So select attack vector, player, create game. Keep the hex number system the same. Select next. We can skip this part. Game name, from the drop down, pick demo number 3. Next. Click new to get a game ID. Want to copy that. Oops, that was a paste. We want to copy. Yeah, we have to retest the connection as we changed it. So click next, sync mode, lead. Now, if you're going to have more than one player, only one person needs to be lead. Everyone else needs to be follow. Skip over the team name, unless you want to play teams. And there's a video for that. It's mainly a squadron strike video, but it applies here as well. But for now, just leave it blank as a free-for-all. Click next, add demo ships. So add all 6 ships in. Let's say we want to fly purple in our other web browser. We would go not owned by me. And then click the synchronization button to upload everything to the database. Once that is done, we go back to our regular web browser, click attack vector, new game, player. This time we're going to join. We don't care about the colors. Game is demo 3. game ID is what we cut and pasted from the other game. Test connection. Load the game. As you can see, we have all 6 ships loaded in. Click next. No, we're going to do lead mode as well. Click next, next, go to list page, and we want to select the purple ship. Once you do that, we will click, synchronize, and we have claimed the purple ship, and we can now play our game as normal. And if you want to have friends play against you, they can select their ships as well and have a good free-for-all battle. So this is the end of part 3 and the end of the regular series. These are the 3 parts that we teach to new players in 3 sessions, roughly 2 hours apiece. This last part right here is pretty short because you spend more time doing the practical practicing of flying the ships, shooting at each other, and less time with the classroom work. But there you have it. Everything you need to get started with movement, lasers, damage, power, fire orders, and seeking weapons. Obviously, the game has a lot more to it as well, and you can explore that at your leisure. I will be making several supplemental tutorials that'll be covering specific things like missiles, zone defense points, etc. They're not covered as part of this set of 3 videos because, as I mentioned in the beginning, Attack Vector is a much more complex game. There's a lot more nuances, a lot of little nooks and crannies to the rules. We just can't cover everything. That's why there's a 120-page rule book out there to read. And for the usual YouTube pitch, if you like this, please give me a thumbs up. Want to see more content like this, please hit the subscribe button. As always, comments and questions below are always appreciated. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you on the battlefield. Have a good day.